Bangladesh faces a historic moment as the International Crimes Tribunal has sentenced former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death for crimes against humanity linked to the deadly crackdown on protesters last year. This verdict marks a dramatic shift in Bangladesh's political landscape and raises questions about justice and political rivalry in the country. Sheikh Hasina's tenure was seen as both a story of development and tightening control. But does this ruling signal true judicial independence, or is it political retribution? And more importantly, what comes next for Bangladesh's democracy, its institutions, and its people? The tribunal's verdict may end Sheikh Hasina's political chapter, but the challenge remains. Can Bangladesh move beyond factionalism to build a more inclusive and stable future? Let me go straight to Kanwal Sibal, who joins me now. Ambassador Sibal has served as an Indian ambassador to France, to Egypt, and multiple other countries. Sir, thank you for speaking to India today. Ambassador Sibal, how should we look at this verdict? Because it is coming from the International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh. The interim government of Bangladesh has called it a historic one. On the other hand, you have the former Prime Minister who's facing the brunt, saying that this is witch hunt.
Well, it's a bit of a kangaroo court. It's an unelected government with very pronounced Islamist tendencies. It has taken several steps to alienate India, to pursue hostile policies towards India. What has happened has to be seen in the light of a few factors. One, of course, I mentioned that there is no proper democratically elected government in Bangladesh. So on a very serious matter like this, which involves the political future of Bangladesh, there has to be a popularly elected, democratically elected government in Bangladesh as a prerequisite. That is one. The second is, if Sheikh Hasina is such a criminal as deserving a death sentence, the odd thing is that she was flown into India officially by Bangladesh itself, flying her to India in one of the military planes of Bangladesh. So which means, therefore, that what had happened in Bangladesh was not only not clear, but the assumption was that Sheikh Hasina was not involved and therefore needed to be protected from the mob, which was on a killing spree. So one has to keep this in mind.
So what do you think are the options before the former Prime Minister? Because I'm looking at this statement which has come in from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the interim government in Dhaka, which says that we will request India to immediately hand over the two fugitives to the authorities of Bangladesh, fulfilling the obligations under the bilateral extradition treaty. How do you see the diplomatic relations then being impacted between India and Bangladesh in this context, when you have this kind of statement come in, and also the Chief Adviser, the legal advisor to Muhammad Yunus, perhaps being very tough with his words?
Well, firstly, as I said, look at the kind of extradition cases that are pending, where neither the British government nor the Canadian government nor the American government, or for that matter, in the case of Zakir Naik, the Malaysian government, have they responded to our request for extradition, and has that affected our ties in any significant way? You carry on other parts of your relationship as much as possible in mutual interest, and you don't make a single issue as determining the quality and the future of the relationship between the two countries. One is that. Secondly, obviously, Sheikh Hasina cannot go back unless there is a change in government and the new government then grants her amnesty or declares that the entire procedure was legally faulty and therefore call it as non-applicable or whatever. Unless that sort of a thing happens, obviously she can't go back. There's no question that India will either make her go back to Bangladesh or send her to a third country, as has been talked about. She will remain in India. Don't forget that there's a legal process at our end because the extradition treaty between India and Bangladesh has a political clause that if the extradition is being asked for political reasons, then it won't be given. It won't be acceded to. And Sheikh Hasina can easily move our courts and fight out her case in our courts against against extradition, in which case the courts will examine whatever charges that Bangladesh has brought against us, the validity of the charges, the seriousness of the charges, the evidence produced. It is a huge, long process.
Okay.
So it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, Bangladesh is now on an anti-Indian role. And this is one more reason they'll keep the pot boiling between India
So, Ambassador,
and Bangladesh and use this as an argument.
Can she approach courts here in India for reprieve? Or she'll have to take the route of International Court of Justice?
No, the International Court of Justice is not going to come into that. You know, the International Court of Justice doesn't take up individual cases like this.
That's right.
And the governments involved have to agree, to accept the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. So there is no question of the International Court of Justice getting into an individual case like that. Now, when it comes to the International Criminal Court, India is not a member of the International Criminal Court. So therefore, any obligation that India may have, if it were a member of the International Criminal Court, does not exist. And as I said, the Indian courts, if Sheikh Hasina decides to go down that route and fight the extradition after a formal request is made by the Bangladesh government with all the evidence to support what they have done, then the whole process will get prolonged indefinitely. Now, let me add one very important thing in this. You remember when Yunus went to Washington and went to the Clinton Center, he introduced one of his principal aides and said very publicly, that the entire, agitation was meticulously planned. He used that word. That has just not happened like that. It was meticulously planned. Now, if it was meticulously planned to overthrow the government of Sheikh Hasina, then, of course, the conclusion is that whatever happened in terms of police firing and everything else was a conspiracy to create a local situation on the ground, which would then lead to her departure from Bangladesh because her own life was being threatened. So you have to keep all these facts in mind. And I think the Bangladesh government, whenever it produces any evidence, will actually get exposed.
All right. Thank you for speaking to us, Ambassador.